That is how long she has been gone. For 45 days, the entire nation has been gripped by this mystery. Throughout this period, the puzzle has been slowly coming together through video clips, DNA results, and public tips. The emerging reality is clear. Nancy was not taken by some phantom. A real person is responsible. This is a physical, trackable individual who left behind footprints, digital records, and DNA while driving a specific car. Someone who prepared for this, spent weeks in that area, and has reportedly been identified by the authority. The FBI does not make these kinds of announcements without solid confirmation. The massive resources involved, from the top levels of the agency to genetic genealogy, show they believe this is solvable. It signals their confidence that the evidence exists and that the perpetrator will be caught. Sheriff Nanos is optimistic. Savannah Guthrie posted on Instagram on March 2nd, thanking the Tucson community for their prayers. She pleaded for everyone to keep hoping and praying to bring her mother home. We are staying on top of this story. We will return with updates as soon as an arrest is made. Our team will be here to provide the full context and report the news when she finally returns. If you have any information regarding Nancy Guthrie's whereabouts, please contact 1-800-CALL-FBI. That number is 1-800-2255-324. Submit tips at tips.fbi.gov or call Pima County at 520-351-4900. $1 million is being offered. Look, if you're sitting on a tip, reach out. If this clip offered some insight or a reason to stay tuned, go ahead and join us. Toggle those alerts so you stay current on the Guthrie file. Leave us your take in the comments section down below. Any theories? What's the story with that contractor? Think a bust is coming? Pass this around. Not for our sake, for Nancy's. Greater exposure puts more heat on this file, raising the likelihood that a witness identifies a clue and finally places that life-altering phone call. Catch you in the next one. It has been almost 50 days since Savannah Guthrie's mom vanished. That suspected kidnapping remains an open case tonight, but we have gathered that detectives pulled more footage from Nancy Guthrie's security setup. Our national reporter, Jonathan Vigliotti, brings us the latest details. Inside, sources from the police tell CBS News that these extra clips were sourced over the past few weeks from home monitoring systems at Nancy Guthrie's Tucson residence. One device was attached to a boundary wall pointing toward the rear of the property and the swimming area. A different lens captured the driveway and the exterior of the garage. These recent frames show relatives, gardeners, and pool technicians dating back weeks before the incident, though nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Into the 7th week of searching for Guthrie and her captors, that specific doorbell footage stands as the only available look at a person of interest. For 45 days, an 84-year-old lady has been missing. No captures, no public names, no sign she is alive. Meanwhile, her daughter, a major face on American TV, has traded her news desk for a microphone to plead for her mother's safe return. Yet tonight, the momentum has shifted. Hidden within the thousands of hours of video that federal agents have been meticulously scanning, a specific face appears. A physique, a way of moving, and a mystery that detectives have been investigating behind the scenes for a while. Who was this laborer active near Nancy Guthrie's place? And what did he happen to witness? This evening, we explore the major breakthrough that law enforcement considers the biggest lead since the start of the case. The Bureau has tracked down a construction worker who was active right near Nancy Guthrie's Catalina Foothills property during the period leading up to the crime. Authorities have not yet named him as an official suspect. However, the intense level of scrutiny being placed on this man suggests a significant shift in the investigation. Stay tuned, because if you have been following this story and losing sleep over this woman's fate, tonight's footage could be the key you have been waiting to see. Prior to discussing that worker, and before delving into the latest federal strategy, it is vital to recognize exactly who Nancy Guthrie is. This isn't just a standard missing person file or a cold data point. This is a woman who spent over 50 years building her world in Tucson, Arizona, a mother, a grandmother. A person who, at 84 years old, still logged into online church every Sunday and shared Saturday night meals with her daughter, Annie. Nancy Ellen Long entered the world on January 27, 1942, in Fort Wright, Kentucky. She relocated to Tucson with her kin in the early 70s, making the desert her permanent home. This was the only place her children, including her daughter Savannah, really knew her to be. You recognize her. Savannah Guthrie, the face of NBC's Today Show and one of the country's leading journalists. The kind of daughter who would drop her coverage of the Winter Games to rush home and hunt for her missing mom. That is precisely what happened. But here is the critical thing to know about Nancy herself. She wasn't exactly a simple mark in the usual way. She was an elderly adult, certainly. She struggled with walking. She relied on a heart device and daily meds. She was 84 years old. But she wasn't alone. Her family was right there. Her daughter Annie lived nearby. She followed a set routine. People were always looking out for her, meaning whoever snatched her knew her situation and did it regardless. On the evening of January 31st, 2026, Nancy ate with Annie. It felt like a typical Saturday. Around 9:45 p.m., she was dropped back at her Catalina Foothills house north of the city. She stepped inside. She was safe. She was home. By 2:28 in the morning, her heart monitor stopped communicating with her tech. By noon on February 1st, she missed her online church service. Her relatives started calling. Silence led to worry, and that worry turned into an emergency call to 911. When the police arrived at that Catalina Foothills residence, the scene they encountered shifted the entire narrative. There was evidence of a struggle on the porch. A trail led from the doorway down to the pavement. Lab tests confirmed it was her own blood. Security hardware had been pulled down or interfered with. A doorbell camera was cut, and an 84-year-old woman was just gone. For the initial 9 days following Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, the search was conducted in almost complete secrecy. Local sheriffs and federal agents collaborated, but the public heard nothing. Then, on February 10th, everything took a turn. FBI Director Kash Patel made a post on X, the site formerly called Twitter, sharing photos and video clips found on Nancy Guthrie's smart doorbell. That data was originally thought to be gone. The device had been unplugged. The previous records had been wiped by new ones. But the FBI, teaming up with tech specialists, managed a remarkable feat. They accessed the core servers of the system to retrieve ghost data. These were pieces of video that had been recorded over but weren't completely gone. They carefully stripped away the digital noise layer by layer. That is how Sheriff Chris Nanos put it. He compared it to delicately removing 5 coats of paint just to reach the 6th underneath. It was a tedious, fragile process that paid off. Detectives managed to pull a blurry yet clear video, someone in a balaclava walking up to Nancy Guthrie's house. He had on dark clothes, black gloves, and trainers. A handgun was tucked into his front waistband. Former detectives immediately spotted that peculiar detail. He also had a black 25-liter Ozark Trail hiking bag. He walks right up to the entrance. He reaches toward the lens with a gloved hand. He attempts to block the view before leaving the porch. He grabs a stray branch from the bushes to hide the camera. This guy is not some frantic amateur. This was planned out, not impulsive. This person realized he was on camera and stayed calm while trying multiple ways to hide his tracks. Federal agents described the suspect as a man around 5'9" to 5'10" with a medium frame. An ex-detective told the press this was no simple break-in. He noted the suspect had his weapon tucked away. While approaching, he arrived with a specific goal in mind. The guy was totally aware of his every move. This is where things get really twisted. The video from February 10th showed him with that hiking pack. In a different set of pictures, that same masked individual shows up again, but his backpack is gone. No holster was seen either. Insiders told the news that this photo was snapped weeks before February 1st. This guy had scoped out Nancy Guthrie's house long before the actual kidnapping took place. He was lurking. He learned the floor plan. He mastered the camera spots and the family's daily habits. It was pure scouting. This leaves detectives with a haunting question they have been chasing for a while. If he was there days earlier, what excuse did he have for hanging around that specific area? When March arrived, the police started following a lead that truly unsettled the entire team. It turns out Nancy's porch camera wasn't the only one to fail during the disappearance. People all over the Catalina Foothills told reporters and cops that their security feeds were blank on February 1st. Then the detectives stumbled upon a detail that shifted the entire context of the investigation. Just a short walk from Nancy's place. A utility hub had been smashed. It was a comms box that handles the local web traffic, and someone had definitely messed with it. It seemed intentional, likely happening right when Nancy Guthrie was snatched from her home. Local sheriffs confirmed to the media that this vandalism was a key part of their current probe. The feds started looking into whether the widespread web outage was a calculated part of the crime. Consider the implications of such a move. Sabotaging the local internet proves the perpetrator knew exactly how the neighborhood's tech systems were wired up. They identified the specific junction to destroy. They understood the provider's routing. They knew cutting those lines would knock out everyone's security feeds at once. It hit Nancy's house and everyone living on her block. This was no accident. It was a tactical operation. Now experts and sleuths are asking the big question: who possesses that level of technical expertise? Who could loiter by a power box for hours without anyone in the neighborhood thinking twice about it? Maybe a line technician or a local contractor, a repairman, or someone who looks like they have a job to do, carrying gear and tools, someone with a work truck whose presence near house lines wouldn't set off any red flags for the locals. There is a vital link the major news outlets haven't quite pieced together for the public yet. When the press mentioned that federal agents found more footage from Nancy's own security system, clips from sensors triggered near the swimming pool, the back lawn, and the side of the house. The authorities focused their search on a very specific window of time for a reason. Their scrutiny went far beyond the night of February 1st, when the kidnapping actually occurred. Investigations spanned the weeks prior to the abduction. Locals informed the press that federal agents requested security recordings starting January 24th, 7 days before Nancy went missing. While checking footage from nearby residences, the authorities reportedly kept their specific objectives secret. The chosen date carries weight. Both January 24th and January 31st fell on Saturdays, with the latter being the evening Nancy dined with Annie before her disappearance. Detectives searched for signs of a trial run or behavioral pattern within the digital records from Nancy's own security system. Visuals from the swimming area and the grounds surrounding the house revealed details that piqued the interest of the task force. According to insiders familiar with the ongoing probe, those recordings displayed relatives and various service crews on the property throughout the preceding month. These individuals had valid reasons to be on the premises. The very security system the perpetrator eventually attempted to sabotage had already logged their identities and modes of transportation. The feds eventually shifted their focus toward a particular automobile. A charcoal-colored luxury SUV appeared on a doorbell camera roughly 2.5 miles away at 2:36 in the morning on February 1st. Forensic teams eventually impounded that vehicle, though its significance to the overall puzzle goes far beyond the hardware itself. 2.5 miles from the scene in the dead of night, navigating quiet suburban streets. Over 1,500 leads poured into the Bureau after the family announced a $1 million bounty. Consequently, federal officials draped billboards across the states of Arizona and Texas, plus New Mexico and California, showcasing Nancy's face and the official tip line. Target areas included Phoenix, El Paso, and Dallas, as well as San Antonio, Houston, Albuquerque, and Los Angeles. The massive reach of this media blitz reveals the FBI's current strategy. They believe this investigation stretches far beyond the Tucson area. Now, let's discuss the primary breakthrough that prompted this update. Out of the thousands of leads and countless hours of video surveillance, along with a mountain of physical, electronic, and scientific proof, the agency identified a laborer who was employed right near the Guthrie residence just before she vanished. Let us clarify exactly what this discovery entails. In the high-end Catalina Foothills district where Nancy lived, seeing active work crews is completely commonplace. With constant renovations and new developments, specialized crews and individual contractors are always coming and going. They haul gear, operate large pickups, and frequently access local infrastructure. Crucially, these workers often operate solo or in pairs near residential homes for long periods. By cross-referencing digital pings, traffic sensors, and a painstaking evaluation of local security feeds, investigators found a specific worker whose presence was logged multiple times leading up to February 1st, matching the specific dates on the FBI's newly established timeline of events. This detail is vital because it involves much more than just a person being in the neighborhood. The working theory, echoed by veteran federal investigators who have weighed in, suggests the individual who took Nancy Guthrie performed detailed reconnaissance before making their move. They had likely scouted her entrance at least once prior to the actual night of the crime. They showed an awareness of how the local cameras worked and knew exactly how to cut the power to kill the house's communications. This calculated, savvy, and persistent presence mirrors someone who is naturally integrated into that specific workforce. Professional profiler Ann Burgess has suggested that the abduction might involve both a personal grudge and organized criminal elements. She pointed out the culprit might have had some history with the family, perhaps not as a friend, but as someone lurking on the periphery of their daily lives, someone who, as she put it, mastered the home's layout and the family's schedule. Contrast that with the FBI's deeper look at the footage. Recordings of the pool and grounds showed various laborers over several weeks. One must ask, does a certain person or truck show up more frequently than necessary? It seems the Bureau has already found the answer. Sheriff Nanos informed the media that the motive for this kidnapping is now largely understood by the police. While keeping specific cards close to his chest, he made a comment that caught the attention of veteran profilers. He stated that the individual responsible could without a doubt act again, refusing to dismiss the threat and urging the community to remain hyper-vigilant. That isn't how law enforcement describes a random, impulsive crime. That is the description of a calculating predator with a refined system. If this person stays at large, they might just strike once more. Let's examine the forensic framework here, as the genetic evidence is easily the most intricate and revealing part of the whole case. Right from the start, officials verified that they pulled biological material off the Nancy Guthrie estate. This sample didn't match her, nor did it come from any relatives, the gardener, or the cleaning lady. Nobody who frequently visited that house was a match. Instead, they found an unidentified man's traces at the kidnapping site. Detectives quickly sent the evidence to CODIS, the federal repository housing more than 19 million criminal records. The search yielded 0 results, meaning that genetic code wasn't linked to anyone previously booked in the system. Next, they discovered a dark glove roughly 2 miles from the Guthrie residence, seemingly identical to what the hidden culprit wore. Federal agents tested that specimen against the national system too, but again, nothing hit. Authorities eventually linked the glove to a local food service employee who had absolutely no ties to this crime. While the sheriff cleared that person, he dropped a significant piece of news. Additional biological samples from the actual premises are currently under expert review. This is where forensic genealogy turns vital, as former federal high-up Frank Figliuzzi noted in the media. Even without the perpetrator ever using a commercial kit like Ancestry or 23andMe or any public platform a family member, maybe a brother or mother, could have, a cousin's data can act as a biological link, helping police build out a lineage to pinpoint the offender. This specific tech has cracked mysteries that stayed frozen for many years. Its accuracy is formidable, and insiders suggest federal agents are already coordinating with private genomic firms. Yet, a hurdle exists. Sheriff Nanos admitted the material from the Guthrie house is what experts label a blended sample. It likely holds data from several people, making the analysis far tougher than checking a pure solo specimen. A specialized Florida laboratory hired by the Bureau has been analyzing this evidence from day one. Currently, there is no word if a viable sequence can be isolated, though police spotted another detail on that security video. CNN's Ed Lavandera highlighted a find from the Tucson reports. In specific video frames, a ring silhouette shows through the glove. A piece of jewelry pressing through the fabric, which detectives are now scrutinizing. What sort of band is it? Which hand and digit is it on? And can they link it back to a potential person of interest? Then there's the black 25-liter Ozark Trail hiking bag from Walmart. Nanos considers it a top-tier clue. Police scanned local store tapes while the retailer handed over sales logs from months before the grab, but a new issue surfaced. News Nation reports the pack might not have even come from a big box store. It could be a used item from an online site, potentially killing the transaction history. Every path is being hunted. Let's step back from the forensics for a second, because at the heart of every clue or failed lead, you find a family. Their suffering has been visible to the whole world, making it gut-wrenching to witness. Savannah Guthrie put aside her reporting duties, the same person who's handled national votes, high court trials, and world disasters from her anchor chair. She dropped everything just to wait by the mailbox at her mom's Tucson place, clutching a bouquet. Posting clip after clip online, she maintained that her mother was out there and begged for her return. Speaking gently to the abductor, she insisted it was not too late for them to make things right. Assuring them they weren't alone, she tried bargaining with a criminal over the internet as a last resort. Her brother and sister, Cameron and Annie, joined her in filming joint appeals. They begged for evidence she was alive and offered a $1 million bounty. A month after she vanished, they gathered at the home to leave flowers and console one another. Meanwhile, Donald Trump spoke up. He warned that those behind the snatching would deal with the full weight of the law. Ex-federal crisis experts worried that the president's words might actually make saving Nancy much harder, effectively raising the tension and potentially making the kidnapper panic or feel trapped. Josh Campbell from CNN put it bluntly, "You want lower stakes, not more heat." Several demands for money were mailed to newsrooms, including the local CBS station, KOLN-TV. TMZ snatched a copy. The demand was for millions in Bitcoin. They had specific pointers on Guthrie's house, her outfit when taken, and her smartwatch's location. Cops took the threat seriously, but kept quiet on their validity before the February 9th cutoff. Lacking proof of life or real contact, a Californian was busted for faking the abduction for cash. He was just a scavenger trying to profit from a family's absolute worst nightmare. He'll face the music. The tips, fakes, ransom notes, and media circus have been overwhelming. Through it all, Nancy is still missing, and her family won't stop their fight. Let's look at who was hauled in, as the pattern reveals the investigation's true path. The first stop was February 10th, when the FBI dropped doorbell video of Carlos Palos, about 60 miles south of Tucson near the border. He was held for several hours. Agents tossed his home and truck, claiming he looked like the guy in the footage. He denied any involvement and was eventually set free without facing any formal charges. ABC News reported the Bureau tracked him through digital footprints like phone pings before the video went public. They moved on. A second big operation went down on February 13th. Tactical teams and forensic units swarmed a residence roughly 2 miles from Nancy's front door. The whole neighborhood was locked down tight for about 4 hours during the search. Their target was Luke Daly, a 37-year-old with a record living with his elderly mother. Both Daly and his mom were detained while their house was thoroughly combed over. A gray SUV linked to him was seized at a nearby restaurant for forensic processing. Daly eventually broke his silence in an interview with a local true crime correspondent. He said, "It wasn't me," and didn't see himself in that grainy doorbell video. Everyone was let go. Not a single person was booked during that specific raid. Reports later suggested that the detectives were moving away from both Daly and Palos. They also looked at Dominic Evans, a teacher who plays in a band with the son-in-law. Internet vigilantes hounded him mercilessly, causing his family a great deal of unearned stress. The Times wrote about the damage online mobs do to people with thin ties to tragedy. Evans, according to most sources, hasn't been named as an official person of interest. The victim's family and their partners have all been completely cleared by the authority. They all passed lie detector tests, which brings us back to that mysterious construction worker. This is the individual the FBI found using digital footprints and high-tech video tools. Someone was in Nancy's neighborhood for reasons that haven't been explained to the public. Sheriff Chris Nanos has been very deliberate with his words during this entire process. Reading between the lines of his updates shows where this case is likely headed next. He told the news that they think they know why she was targeted. Specifically, no suspect has been named, but the motive is apparently clear to the detectives. He wouldn't reveal the motive, but confirmed the snatching was intentional, not some accident. He warned the culprit could strike again and told the public to stay very alert. A former Fed speaking with the media proposed a theory that has really started to pick up steam. This looks like a calculated extortion scheme driven by a desire for a big payday. It wasn't a random break-in or a grudge, but a professional criminal setup. The notes were focused on Bitcoin, demanding millions with very specific digital wallet addresses. They had private household details suggesting the perpetrator had been watching the family closely. The crypto link is huge because Bitcoin isn't as anonymous as many people believe. Digital forensics has gotten much more advanced over the last 10 years or so. If they ever try to move that money, the feds will likely track the transaction. Focusing on the mother of Savannah Guthrie implies the culprit recognized the link between Nancy and her famous, wealthy daughter. It was someone convinced the family would cough up the cash. A person who studied them, found the weak link, and plotted the ransom. Former profiler Ann Burgess believes this kidnapping blends personal motives with professional crime. Someone familiar with their inner circle. Likely not a close friend, but certainly not a random stranger. This brings us back to the laborer the Bureau spotted near Nancy's house weeks prior, identified through digital footprints and video footage. If this person had a valid reason to be there, like working on a nearby site, they had plenty of time to scout the home. They could track when people arrived, when packages were delivered, and where the security cameras were blind. According to the sheriff, the detectives are gaining significant ground. He made this public on NBC. In the world of policing, saying you are definitely closer is far from a guess. It is a deliberate, professional signal to the public and the suspect. Let's evaluate the current state of the search and what this identified worker means for the case's momentum. Federal agents and Pima County officials have developed a profile, a male between 5'9" and 5'10". He has a medium build and was recorded at the house twice, including a visit before she was even taken. Genetic material found at the scene does not match anyone currently known to the family. A complex DNA sample is currently being processed by a specialized laboratory in Florida. Investigators are optimistic that once the analysis is finished, it will provide a specific name. Digital evidence from phones and traffic cams was strong enough to trigger several search warrants within the first 14 days. The surveillance window now goes back to at least January 24th, a full week before the crime. This proves authorities are looking at a calculated pattern of behavior rather than a random incident. A busted utility box nearby might be tied to the deliberate internet outage on the night she disappeared. Such details point to advanced planning and local technical expertise. A $1 million reward is now on the table. With billboards in 4 states and White House involvement, the focus is now on that worker seen in the neighborhood. Despite the progress, no formal charges have been filed. They have no named suspect and no sign of Nancy. Former agent Jennifer Coffindaffer has criticized the billboard strategy for failing to show the person of interest's face. She publicly urged them to show his image as he is the primary lead. If they have a picture, even if it is grainy, putting it next to Nancy might trigger the one phone call that cracks this case. Finding the middle ground between keeping secrets and asking for help is a constant struggle for law enforcement. Beyond the forensic tests and tactical decisions, everyone is fighting against the passage of time. Nancy Guthrie is 84 and requires daily medication for a serious heart condition. Her heart monitor stopped syncing the very night she was abducted. It has been 45 days. The FBI identified the construction worker through digital footprints, video cross-referencing, and cell tower data. No formal charges have been filed. But investigators do not deploy forensic genealogy, genetic specialists, and targeted surveillance warrants unless they believe an arrest is close. The perfect cover is not invisibility. It is legitimacy. Someone who belongs in a neighborhood does not need to hide. They just need a reason to be there. That is what made this surveillance possible for weeks. A worker near active construction sites in an upscale neighborhood is invisible by design. The investigation into that cover is now the central thread connecting everything else. Former agent Jennifer Coffindaffer publicly urged investigators to release the worker image alongside Nancy's photo on the billboards. A single identification call could close this case faster than any forensic timeline. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old, requires a pacemaker and daily medication, and has been missing for 45 days. Her heart monitor has been dark since 2:28 a.m. on February 1st. Every day without answers is a day her family cannot get back. If you recognize anyone matching the physical description, a male around 5'9" to 10 with a medium build who was active near the Catalina Foothills construction sites before February 1st, call 1-800-CALL-FBI or submit at tips.fbi.gov. $1 million is waiting. Subscribe and share this video. More eyes on this case increases the chance that one witness finally makes the call that brings Nancy home. The FBI believes an arrest is coming. Help make it happen faster. 45 days in, with no arrest and no sign of life, federal investigators announced the biggest shift since the case began. They had identified a construction worker seen near Nancy Guthrie home in the weeks before she was taken. The identification came not from a tip, but from thousands of hours of cross-reference video, traffic sensors, neighborhood doorbell cameras, and footage pulled from Nancy's own security system covering the pool and side yard. The same masked figure who appeared on the night of February 1st was also captured on camera in the same area weeks earlier, without the backpack and holster, watching. That was reconnaissance, not coincidence. A utility box servicing the neighborhood internet was found vandalized near the time of the abduction. Someone who knew how that infrastructure worked targeted the specific junction that would knock out every security camera on the block simultaneously. The construction angle explains the cover. In the Catalina foothills, work crews are a daily fixture. A man with tools, a truck, and a reason to be near residential infrastructure raises no flags. He could watch for weeks, and nobody would look twice. The FBI pulled extended surveillance footage going back to January 24th, a full week before the kidnapping. Both that date and January 31st were Saturdays, the day Nancy routinely dined with her daughter Annie. The pattern was being tracked. Two separate search operations were conducted on named individuals, Carlos Palos and Luke Daly. Both were detained, both cooperated, and both were released without charges. The family, including Tommaso Cioni and Annie Guthrie, were fully cleared through polygraph testing. The DNA found at the scene remains unmatched in CODIS. A glove found 2 miles away was linked to a local food service worker with no connection to the crime and was cleared. A separate biological sample from inside the house is still under forensic analysis at a specialized laboratory. Video analysts also identified a ring impression visible through the suspect glove fabric in specific frames. The 2 5-liter Ozark Trail backpack from Walmart is a top-tier evidence lead. Store transaction records and retail footage are being reviewed alongside secondary market sources. Former profiler Ann Burgess described the crime as blending personal familiarity with organized execution. Not a close friend, but not a stranger. Someone on the periphery who had earned enough proximity to map the house, the routine, and the gaps in the security. Sheriff Nanos confirmed on NBC that his team is gaining ground. He stated the motive is understood, that the crime was deliberate, and that the perpetrator could strike again. That last warning is not standard language for a one-off opportunistic crime.